5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
And welcome to Truth, Beer, and Podsequences. Truth, Beer, and Podsequences is the podcast where we listen to all of the Cincinnati-based craft beer podcasts from the week before. We get together and, tell our version of how those podcasts went. Hopefully there's not too many consequences from the hosts of the other shows. So far, so good. I feel like I'm not talking great today. I had a lot of talking at my full-time job today. Big meeting, big things ahead of this. As we record, we're going into President's Day weekend. And so at my full-time job, I had to do a lot of talking for this meeting. So forgive me and or not. Whatever, but I do ask for your patience with that. We are here at BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery, and shout out to our host, BC's Bottle Lodge. Before we get too deep into, the rest of the benchmarks that we hit at the beginning of the show, I want to make sure that I introduce the best co-host in Podcastlandia.
I am Julia. I am a beer drinker. I write a couple things about beer here and there, mostly during the beer event season, and I have more fun talking about craft beer podcasts with you, Marco, than I ever thought I would. So I am appreciative of your time, even if you're having a hard time speaking today.
I have a hard time speaking, and I have a hard time remembering all the things that we cover. I had a tough go of the 0.5 that we recorded here, but I am Marco.
You sounded great.
I am Marco, and I have several jobs. I am a brewer as one of the jobs, and coming up soon, I'll tell you what another one of the jobs is in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
But anyway, we did shout out our podcast hosts, BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery. They're always gracious hosts.
Thank you to producer Brian, who is here today producing for us some incredibly tasty beers, which I will say this would not be a good craft beer podcast if we didn't talk about the beers that we were drinking. So, Marco, would you like to go ahead and start us off with what we're drinking before we let everyone know what podcast we're going to be covering?
Will do, Julia. I am drinking, I don't know, for the third or fourth show in a row, starting off with Lore from Sonder Pale Ale.
Hey, when it's good, might as well keep on drinking.
Yeah, it's good. What you got?
I have something new on the tap list. This is Where the Wild Hops Are. It's an IPA by DogfishHead, and I love the Where the Wild Things Are story. So when I saw that, I went, gotta get it, and it's pretty good. It's nothing overly spectacular, but it's good. I'm enjoying drinking it.
How does it smell, Julia? What's the profile there? Does it smell as good as BC's Bottle Lodge smells, thanks to the Cintas guy?
Although it does smell very fresh, it does not smell nearly as clean as the Cintas guy leaves BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery.
Okay, well, guess we won't make a candle out of that one then. Thank you to everybody. If this is your first time listening, thank you. If you've been with us for a while, thank you as well. Mm-hmm. Speaking about that, Julia,
yes,
you put a lot of work and effort over this past week into something new. Do you want to talk to our listeners about what that new thing is?
I do. First, I do want to say that if you do like what you're hearing today, if this is your first time listening to us, even if it's not your first time and you haven't subscribed to the podcast on whatever your favorite podcatcher is, we would really love for you to subscribe, like, follow, review, rate, share, tell your friends about us, tell your coworkers about us. You can follow us on every single social media platform, well, almost every single social media platform at Truth Beer Pod. And you can email us at truthbeerpod@gmail.com if there's something that you would like to tell us that is outside of social media. But the work that Marco was talking about is I put all of our episodes up on YouTube, so you can now listen to the show on YouTube. There's no video yet. That may be something that we're working on for the future, but it is not part of the show yet. But there are people that enjoy going to YouTube to put on podcasts, and we are now there. So just search Truth Beer Pod on the YouTubes, and every single one of our episodes outside of the calendar event episodes, our 0.5s, are now available for your listening pleasure.
Well, that's awesome, Julia, and thank you for your work and effort at that. And everybody listening, get to work. Get over there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way we can build that platform out and hopefully soon offer you more content. Mm-hmm. It's not just a black screen up there. It's our logo.
and the little like sound wave kind of thing going on. So I know that my Josh said that he likes it because with working from home, it's hard for him to listen to podcasts on his phone because he's no longer driving to and from. So he'll put it on YouTube and be able to listen to it there. So he's, I think, almost caught up with all of our episodes.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and if you're not going to, say, connect your phone to another speaker or something of that nature, you can probably get a better volume, say, if you're trying to do some household chores, if you connect to your television or not connect to your television, but pull YouTube up on your smart TV or whatever. So that could be cool too.
Exactly.
So I'm excited about that. I hope all the listeners are excited about that. And so please help us grow that platform. Get over, subscribe, tell your friends, your coworkers, tell people that aren't your friends, and maybe you'll make a friend.
There you go. So, Marco, let's get to the meat and potatoes. I kind of hate that phrase, but it works really well. The meat and potatoes of what this show is about.
Yeah.
Cincinnati Craft Beer Podcasts.
Yep.
Did you happen to listen to any this past week?
I listened to a few. I was very, very, very busy, and some of them didn't come out on their normal days, but I was able to accomplish the challenge. What about you, Julia?
I listened to all of the ones that I am aware of, so let's see if we're on the same page with these. I listened to Cincy Brewcast. Did you?
Yep.
Nice. Sonder Stories?
Yes.
And Shift Beers.
I did.
Hell yeah. So we are going to cover those 3 podcasts today. We have our beers. We have our laminated show sheets. What do you say we dig into? Yeah,
we'll go ahead and cover them, and we'll cover them in not the order that they came out.
You know what? We could do them in reverse alphabetical order.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's start with Sonder Stories. They missed last week. Well, I don't want to say they missed. Sometimes, depending on how busy they are, they're just not able to put out an episode. So there was a break. So let's start with the one that is the most recent comeback kid to the Cincinnati Craft Beer Podcasts show.
Yeah, sounds good. Welcome back, Sonder Stories.
So Chapter 87, The Big Game, which I don't... What big game could they possibly have been talking about during this episode?
You know what, Julia? Let's just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes.
Let's. You know what? It wasn't a Band-Aid. It was more like Gorilla Tape. Let's just go ahead and rip it off.
Okay, so the big game that they mentioned, and they mentioned multiple times that are we even allowed to talk about what the name of said big game was, it's something that we've talked about on a couple of our bonus episodes, the Super Bowl. Bengals versus the Rams. Personally, I'm obviously disappointed in the result. However, I am so proud and excited of what this team was able to do this year that I'm okay that we didn't win. Yes, I would have rather us bring home the rings and the Lombardi Trophy, but it has been 31 years since we have made it this far. And I think that we have the team to be able to make it that far again. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds with this because this is not what the show was about.
There was a little, there was sports ball talk for sure.
Yes.
But they talked about things leading up to a Super Bowl. People talk about, right? They talked about food.
Right.
They talked about drinks. Mm-hmm. And they did talk about some sports ball. So I don't imagine this is going to take us too entirely long because. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately,
we're not continuing a celebration.
This was a build-up. This was a build-up to an exciting event. That the exciting event, we wish had a different outcome. Mm-hmm. But that does not take away from the fact that you should go listen to the show for all of your party, snack, or Super Bowl needs, drinks, and stuff like that. And if you like Sonder Stories or a listener of Sonder Stories, get back in there and get into the rhythm of listening to Sonder Stories because the gang is back. It's fun to listen to familiar voices tell stories.
It was. So it was Justin, Channy. Oh my goodness, Justin, Danny.
I'm sorry,
and
that must
Chad.
be contagious.
So it was the typical Sonder Stories cast: Justin, Chad, and Danny. There we go. I can say words and names without blending them all together. I thought one of the interesting things at the very beginning was. No one other than Chad had ever heard the phrase of heavy is the head that wears the crown. and
heavy is the head
that wears the crown.
Wears the
yes.
crown.
Yes, and I'm like, I've heard that for I don't know how long, but they were just like, I've never heard that before. Never heard that before. It's like, guys,
Someone's got a giant dome.
Either I am really fucking old.
His head is always back because his head's so heavy.
But I thought that was funny because I mean, to me, I feel like that is a very and that's very easily a generational thing to where certain phrases just aren't said as much as they used to be said. And heavy is the head that wears the crown is apparently one of them.
Somebody at the meeting that I was at all day today said, "Okay, guys, it's a marathon, not a race."
Jeez.
Something interesting. One of the snacks that Justin likes to prepare is pigs in a blanket, and he likes to sprinkle everything bagel seasoning on those pigs in a blanket,
which I have never heard of being done before, but I could see that working incredibly well.
What if I told you there's a brewery that does that?
Oh my God, what brewery does that?
Well, what if I told you there's a brewery? Yeah.
Tell me more.
And is in Mason.
Is it some? Well, okay. So here's a question, and this is tangenting again because that's kind of what we do when we talk about these shows. The brew pub that's in Sonder, do you consider that Sonder's food, or would you say, like, when you're talking about a brewery's food, quote unquote, air quotes for those of you not on the Platinum Patreon level,
live stream?
Exactly. So when you say a brewery does this, is it a brewery that has a separate company that has a kitchen there, or is this a brewery that that the food is all part of their same name and business? Does that make sense?
Yep. Oh, I totally get what you're saying, right? And so when I say, "Hey, did you go to Brew River in Mason?" Well, the only Brew River in Mason is in Sonder.
Right, but a lot of people would say Sonder has great food.
Right, but it's Brew River's kitchen.
Right, similar to Smoked Out Cincy and Fretboard. It's in Fretboard, but it's its own entity, but people tend to blend those. So I wanted to make sure that I knew.
Monkish or Monk's Pizza in 16 Lots, or what is it called? Mad Monk's Pizza? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't recall. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's why I questioned that when you say
No, this was Common Beer Company.
Okay. I did not know that.
And actually, I think it's missing an ingredient. I don't think it's pigs. No, it is pigs in a blanket.
Is it missing the pig?
No. But they have pretzels and then pigs in a blanket.
So speaking of Common Beer Company and Sonder stories, I am so sorry, but this is just kind of what we do.
It's all right.
You were there with an amazing friend and guest of the show.
I was.
Weren't you? Nice.
I was.
Nice.
Vincent and I were there with Lee.
Hell yeah. Was that just like chance you happen to walk in and it's just like, yo,
so
I know that huge tall guy over there.
So I was driving to the Common Beer Company. I got a text from Lee asking if I was at BC's.
Okay.
And I said, no, actually, I'm on my way to the Common Beer Company.
Oh, cool.
And he said, okay, I might see you.
Nice.
Well, actually, more to the story is he was having a couple of beers with the Shift Beers crew over at the place that they don't work at.
Nice.
And he wasn't ready to go home yet. And so he met me at Common Beer Company.
Oh,
and then I stayed
awesome.
there like a lot longer than I expected being at.
That's awesome. Lee is so freaking fantastic.
He's
He texted
great.
me about the Super Bowl. He's like, man, let's go. Are you ready? Who day? I mean, he is the best person in the world. And I am so glad that just through the magic of podcasting, he has come into like all of our lives, Shift Beers and us and everyone else.
Yep.
Okay,
He was dropping off like a 30 rack of Kurs.
Yeah. I would expect nothing less.
Yeah,
from him.
that was what he was doing.
That's
they were
awesome.
having fun.
That's awesome. All right.
What other notes do you have from the Sonder stories?
So Sonder asked in the beginning, they said that they got either a comment or in just talking to some people that listen, that some people feel Sonder stories is too inside jokey. Like some of the things that they mention and laugh about. And I was going to say, I don't think it is.
I think it was more of, okay, so Justin was talking about the drive that they had. And he put on a podcast. And if it's the one I'm thinking about, now they don't mention it, but if it's the one I'm thinking about, there are just tons of inside jokes.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
And then,
Okay.
so what he said, and this was very near the beginning, he's like,
Right.
so does our show have too many of these inside jokes?
Okay, when I listened to it, the way that I heard the words or interpreted it was he was worried that their show, like someone had mentioned, their show was too inside jokey, which
No.
I mean, I feel like any podcast, hell, any TV show, any long running, either episodic or serial show, there are going to be either jokes or things that carry from episode to episode that people that have listened to all of them are going to pick up on.
Right.
But people that haven't won't. But I don't feel that there is anything in Sonder stories that maybe is an inside joke, such as like the weird flex kind of thing.
Right. Well,
That you would be if you don't get it, you're going to not get the entire episode. You're going to say, "Huh, there was something more to that," but it's such a tiny segment of their entire show that no, I don't think that Sonder Stories as a whole is inside jokey at all.
Well, there are some, but
Sure, but it doesn't
it doesn't take over the majority of the show. The complaint was his wife was riding in the car with him, and he put on one of his favorite podcasts, and she asked if they could listen to something else because it was too many inside jokes combined together in that small 7-minute period.
Which Sonder does not do.
Well, Sonder Stories opens with nothing but inside jokes. Their intro has nothing but inside jokes in it.
To me,
and you don't know that. You just think those are like out. Of course they are. They're outtakes, but they don't come with context. In order to have the context, you needed to have listened to the show.
True, but I don't feel that they picked for their intro. I don't think that they picked such obscure sounding clips that you're going, I have absolutely no idea what this show is going to be about. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. I mean, if you're using clips, random clips from a show, those are going to be some of like the most kind of memorable or fun for them clips. And so hopefully that draws people to say, I need to listen to their back catalog of episodes to find why was it so funny, or why was it a weird flex that someone ate a salad, which is probably my favorite out of all. It's not even an inside joke. It is a huge part of. Was it the first time that Olivia from Kings Island was on Sonder Stories, or was it the second time?
So the second
time. So
the first time was it Blue Ice Cream?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're correct. So if you listen to Sonder Stories for the first time and you hear, in the intro, I ate a salad today, and then you kind of hear Justin very quietly in the background going, weird flex, but okay. It's fun. And to me, if I had never listened to the show before, I would go, I need to figure out what episode that is, because that's probably part of a hilarious conversation, which it was.
Right, it was.
But I don't feel like it's something that, because they have those there, makes me go, well, I don't know what they're talking about for the entire duration of the show.
No, but I think I completely agree with you that any show that has, some legs, right? Stuff like that is going to come up, and hopefully in the intro it gets you laughing, it gets you smiling, and it gets you thinking, okay, so what's going to be clip worthy coming out of this show this time?
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think they're doing a fine job.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I thought was great, kind of real quickly, Chase thinks that they should send William Bach out to all of the competitions. And it's
William
a good
Goat.
William Goat. What did I say?
William Bach.
It's a Bach beer, so words. I actually have William Bach written down, even though it is very clearly William Goat, which
Bach beer. William Goat.
It's
Bach
almost,
beer.
So it's not goat beer. Isn't Bach the goat of beers?
It's from.
I know.
The essence of
goat. So when you smell a Bach beer, if it doesn't smell like a goat, the brewery's doing it wrong.
Doing it wrong completely.
They're doing it completely wrong. And Saunders William Goat Bach beer is the most goat essency of all of the local Bach beers.
Yep.
It is competition worthy. Gold medals all the way.
It's from free range. Sustainably
organic, free
grown,
range, grass fed
goats.
Yeah. I mean, This song is... So, speaking of ridiculous, Marshawn Lynch, they feel, is a national treasure. Your thoughts on that, since we have just finished the football seasons?
I get where they're coming from, right? Where it's somebody who was in the public eye, who is, performed at a high level at the thing that they chose to do for a profession for a long time, and is just a content creator. And the thing is that he's somebody who understood over time that they can just create this content with just being really more of themselves.
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think that he did great when he was playing, and I think that now that he is more of, like you said, more of that like content creator, he is very quickly becoming a force into himself, kind of like Chad Ochocinco is. If you've never watched I Am Athlete on YouTube, it's a show with him, Brandon Marshall.
Brandon Marshall.
It's I love that show. It's over an hour long, so it's hard for me to watch every single one, but the conversations that they have ties into like what Marshawn's starting to do, and it's wonderful. Some of the other things one of the things Chad mentioned that he has at his Superb Owl party, because there was a huge conversation about, can you say Super Bowl, can you say NFL, what can you say, what can you not say. So his Superb Owl party, Buskin donuts and Grater's black raspberry chip ice cream made into a like ice cream sandwich, which I know you can't have, but holy shit, that sounds absolutely amazing. I need an invite to the next party. Can you at least do the pigs on a blanket with everything seasoning?
It depends. It depends on what they're wrapping the pigs in.
Blankets.
I understand. If the blankets are puff pastry or pastry that's puffy and turns brown, I need to make sure there's no butter in that puff pastry.
Right. All right. So. That's fair. There was a whole lot of food talk, and it was pretty nice.
Wonderful. It's pretty delicious, actually.
Delicious. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we did an entire 35 40 minutes of 0.5
we did
on food, and I feel that we could probably do in our future several episodes of food.
Yeah, agreed. 100% there. Apparently burning couches in celebration needs to be more of a thing. I was not aware of that. I knew that other cities, like sometimes you would see, they're celebrating this and that, and they're burning couches in the streets. I didn't realize that Danny had been a part of that in Norwood, which is downtown, according to Justin.
Right, according to Justin. Yeah,
upper
Norwood,
downtown.
Norwood downtown. Yeah, and it's one of those things where they were responsible about it, right? They weren't going to light it on fire in the house.
Right, they moved it out onto the street.
Move it out on the street and light it on fire.
And then they got into, as they kind of wrapped up stuff before they got to their What Are You Listening To segment, they did go into talking about the biggest game, the big game of the weekend, the big event that the entire city has been holding their breaths for, and just the hype has been beyond unreal. The Winter Olympics, specifically the USA men's curling team.
I tell you what, that guy, and I think I've got his name here. Hold on a second, Julia. Let me look into my notes.
So while you're doing that, I know who you're talking about. That guy is a beast at curling. If you don't know who we're talking about, you need to reevaluate your life. You need to refocus on the U.S. men's national team for the sport of curling, because it was super ridiculous.
Matt Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Man.
If that's not a winner's name, I don't know what is.
Wow.
I mean, he.
I just showed Julia the picture that I
like the flowing locks, the Fu Manchu like facial hair thing that he has going on. That's a champion right there.
Was that those like Nikes? Mm-hmm. What are they, tricolor, or do they have 4 or 5 colors on them?
I think it was mostly just the red, white, and blue on it, but he still had kind of, were they Nikes or were they New Balance? Because as we know, curling is the dad sport. So I don't know. I couldn't tell if they were Nikes or New Balance. I hope that they're New Balance.
These are Nikes.
Oh, okay.
These are Nikes.
Okay.
These have
They're
Go ahead,
pretty.
Julie.
They're pretty fancy.
See that with the colors there?
Oh, that does have a little bit of green and yellow, which is not part of the American flag.
It almost looks like
you have to deduct some points.
It almost looked like he robbed the Jamaican Ronald McDonald for those Nikes.
It does. Did you know that this year the Jamaicans had a bobsled team for the first time in multiple years? Speaking of,
I didn't know that they stopped having a bobsled team.
Yeah, apparently they didn't have one for many a year, and this was the first time that they kind of came back. So,
well,
feel
rest
the
in
rhythm,
peace, John
feel
Candy.
the rhyme. Let's go. It's bobsled time. I don't remember the second half of that, and I should.
Yeah.
I feel terrible.
Yeah.
But no, they were talking about the Winter Olympics, and actually, while I was at
It's pretty cool running.
the place that Shift Beer does not work at before we met up here at BC's, the women's curling event was going on, so I got a chance to watch a bit of that.
Are there any mullets at the women's curling event?
There were not, strangely enough.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of a missed opportunity there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so chapter 87 of Sonder Stories, where they talked about the big game, i.e. curling. It was very food heavy, but it was, well, I don't say but. That makes it sound like being food heavy is a negative.
No.
It was a great show.
If they want to get together and talk about hot dogs, I mean, get together and talk about hot dogs, whatever.
Yeah. There were no mentions of like any little tidbits or secret information or upcoming releases from Sonder that they talked about, but it was just a really fun show about people being excited about the sports ball weekend and how they prepare for it, and just friends talking while they had a couple beers, which you heard that they had. They just didn't actually mention what specifically they were drinking, so we can't tell you that.
Oh, I do want to give a follow-up
Yes.
To a previous conversation we had.
Yes.
Remember how I said that I think we may have scared Danny away from reading a book here on Friday nights?
Yes.
I just want to say I'm happy to report that I came to BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery with Vincent on Friday night, I believe it was, and Danny Harold was here with a book.
Good. Well, Danny, we never intended to scare you away from BC's. Please continue to come here and read your books and just enjoy the ambiance and the cleanliness and the freshness of BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery.
Yep.
Cool. Was there anything else you had about Sonder Stories before we move on to the next show?
I don't think so. I mean, this pretty cool book. It was a how-to makeup book from Boy George. I'm sure it was a page turner. And Danny, don't be afraid to post that on social.
Yeah. You know what I think would be a cool addition to Sonder Stories, because it is a somewhat, I don't say segmented podcast, but they do definitely have sections that they try to hit every time, such as what are you listening to? I think it'd be really cool to have, prior to what are you listening to, a section where Danny says what he's reading. What are you reading?
Ah, yes.
What are you page turning to? I don't know. It's something to try to plug in there.
What'd be funny is if they had the what are you listening to, and instead when it says listening, go reading.
Where you have like that AI kind of put in a name.
Reading.
Yeah.
And then instead of to, now.
That would be awesome. I would love that. So Danny, you produce Sonder Stories. Just a thought. You could add that in. You could even record what you're listening to, or what you're reading, like after the fact, and just plug it in right at the very end. And I'd be interested to know. So that's our creative feedback for you and Sonder Stories.
Yeah.
Your beer looks like it's getting close to empty, so let's take a super quick break, and then we're going to come back. And I know that I said reverse alphabetical order, but let's do Cincy Brewcast next when we come back, because there is a big announcement about this episode of Shift Beers that I think deserves to wait until the end. You good with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. We'll be right back, guys. All right, guys, we are back after a super quick break to you. I am still working on my Where the Wild Hops Are. So, Marco, what do you have in your glass? It looks like you have a freshly filled pour from producer Brian here at BC's.
I do. It's a Gentle Revolution from HighGrain. It's a Czech Pilsner, which is on their slow pour tap.
I'll tell you, I have been such a fan of everything that they've had on their slow pour taps.
It's great.
It is really,
Just really
really good. Yeah. Well, how is it? If you have a chance to to take a sip of it yet, or are you still waiting for the head to calm
it's
down
great.
a bit? Nice.
Really good.
All right.
Really good. I had this when I was at HighGrain.
All right, so let's move on to Cincy Brewcast, where the gnome went down to Woodburn because Woodburn now has, I believe at the time that this is released, it should be a fully open kitchen with an amazing sounding food menu. So he talked more about the food than the beer, but because it's at a brewery, it all ties nicely together.
Yes, and so much so that they didn't have a From the Beer Fridge segment.
They didn't. That was one of the things that I have written down in my notes is I got to the end of the episode, I'm like, well, wait a second.
Yeah, they didn't mention anything.
There was nothing. So I actually went back, because they typically do that, even if the conversation takes a few minutes before Gnome gets to From the Beer Fridge. Normally it's within the first 10, 15 minutes of an episode. So I went back thinking, did I miss this? But no, they did not have a From the Beer Fridge segment. If you watch the Weekly Pint, well, I don't want to say watch, it's an interactive experience. The Weekly Pint, Monday evenings, typically between 9 and 9:30 on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, wherever there is a live streaming option. He did talk about the fact that they did drink beers, but because it didn't seem to fit in the flow of the conversation, he didn't want to interrupt that flow by trying to force a From the Beer Fridge segment in, which made a lot of sense when you hear it after the fact. But
Okay.
you kind of, at least, being kind of hardcore, listeners and supporters of Cincy Brewcast, we noticed.
Yeah, we did notice. I mean, they didn't talk anything about beer other than the fact that this is at a brewery and they're part of a conglomerate of brands.
It's true.
And,
yeah.
They have beer, and each place is trying to keep their own identity. And that's also with the food. So
Yeah.
this kitchen at Woodburn, their head of culinary initiative,
Which is friend to Shift Beers, Boomin.
Boomin.
So I'll just say real fast before you go, the people that were on this episode, the guests were, obviously Gnarly Gnome was the host, Joshy E from Shift Beers, and well, I guess I'll just say from Woodburn, because he is a part of that whole,
right?
like, as you said,
One of the places
conglomerate.
he doesn't work at when he's
Exactly.
on Shift Beers
Exactly.
is Woodburn.
So Joshy E. Boomin, who is the culinary director, and Andrew Hahn, who is the new head chef down at Woodburn, which, my God, how many more Andrews can be part of the brewery scene in one way or another?
We're trying real hard to bring them all into the Cincinnati craft beer scene. All the Andrews, all the
I'm telling
Andes.
you. But anyway, you were saying.
No, but consistency, right? They're trying to.
yeah.
It's weird when I say consistency, but it's consistency in each brand to itself. They want to stay true to each brand to itself, but what they also want to do with Woodburn is create this culinary identity for Woodburn, but they also have a culinary council, let's say, to create or positively improve the culinary experience at each of their brands.
Correct.
Now,
which their other brands, in case you're not familiar, would be March 1st, Fig Leaf, and then once it opens, the Millcroft over in Milford.
and Woodburn.
Well, right, but I feel like Woodburn is kind of a given based off.
We took care of that, right? But yes, I also think that this is an excellent way to test kitchen a lot of things to make sure that when you open the Millcroft that you go in with an idea, with a plan, and then you can execute on that idea and plan. And whether or not things on the menu for a short period of time or not that are going to be at Millcroft or anywhere else in their other brands, maybe not. Maybe they just use the kitchen to prepare themselves to put that culinary initiative into that location.
Right. I mean,
the new location, the Millcroft.
Right. Now, they did say, and this is kind of Woodburn specific, they did mention that they want Woodburn to be just as well known for their food and the quality of the food as the beers. This feels like it's going to be something to where if you go into Woodburn, you might recommend it to your friends to say, I want a good place to go out for dinner, for lunch, for, whatever eating experience you want. Go to Woodburn. They want you to be able to say that just as frequently as go to Woodburn for the quality of the beer or the hard seltzers or the hard sodas, as it may come to be.
Or the liquor.
Or the liquor. That's true.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
that'd be great. Have you been to Woodburn?
I have not. I've had a couple Woodburn beers prior to the whole thing that happened with them before March 1st came in and bought them, took over, whatever actually happened there. So prior to all of that nonsense, I have had a couple of their beers at beer festivals. Salmon Shorts was absolutely delicious. That's the one that sticks out in my head the most. I have not been to Woodburn since the reopening, but I have had I guess I'll use air quotes, Woodburn branded beers since the reopening that have been available at other locations.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I have been to Woodburn under previous ownership, and I have not yet under current ownership. But
I did tell my Josh once I listened to this episode. I said, "Hey, we need to make it a point to actually go there to try the food." I mean, we know the beer is going to be beer, seltzer, whatever drink, the liquors, the cocktails. We know that those are going to be good based off of experiences at the other family of alcohol establishments, just to kind of put them under one huge umbrella.
Right.
But I did say, holy cow, this sounds amazing. We need to go there for the food at some point once the full menu is available.
It sounds very exciting, and the dialogue was very good. It flowed very well. It's a dive into a little bit of what Boomin has done around the city, a little bit of what the new chef, Chef Andrew, has done around the city. It was also a dive into the way they look at their culinary approach, individually and both collaboratively, which is really cool.
Right. Yeah, to kind of touch on that, Andrew said that, like, when he was sharing his cooking story, his grandma really introduced him to cooking and how to cook and recipes, and he was very heavy-handed into using soy sauce for a lot of their recipes.
Right.
And it was Boomin that kind of, as they collaborated on the taste of the food that was being prepared, said, hey, we need to balance this a little better. There's nothing wrong with having a soy sauce-heavy recipe, but maybe dial it back a bit and let some of the other flavors really shine through. And that was a really cool part of the conversation.
Yeah, like the Asian poutine.
Exactly. I mean, whoever thought that adding kind of one of the marinated ramen eggs and soy sauce to a poutine recipe, or I don't say recipe, but a dish. Yeah. Which, I mean, shout out to, and this is kind of going into shift beers a little bit, but the Newbert Report, who picked up on something that was said about gravy fries, and they're like, yo, that's poutine. At least Woodburn has that right. So so kind of a soy sauce marinated egg poutine. When you hear it, it sounds incredibly odd, but the way that they described it in the Woodburn kitchen sense with Boomin and Andrew and how they're putting it together, my God,
sounds delicious.
I never thought about that kind of an element to it.
I'd have to ask them to hold the dairy, but it sounds delicious.
True, which I think they could do. It sounded like when they broke down the recipe that could be something that they do. They also mentioned that there's a possible upcoming, and this is still entirely in the works, so do not take our word as gospel.
Ever.
Recognize the air quotes in everything that we say, but there could be a brewer series of food where they take something inspired by a beer recipe or something that a brewer, i.e. Button Brian, which, since he's a Button, I mean, it could be anyone.
Yeah.
In that conglomerate's team mentioning, saying, hey, we have a beer that has strawberry balsamic vinegar. Make a food that pairs well with that. Because as we all know, the strawberry balsamic is one of their top sellers when it's available. It's one of my favorites.
Sounds delicious.
It is. And I can't wait to see what kind of food that they come up with.
Didn't you have it when you were on Shift Beers?
Not when I was on Shift Beers. I went up to the place I don't work. Well, I mean, we're not talking about Shift Beers. So I went up to March 1st a while back. Okay. And just to it was after work. I had some free time, so I went up there. The weather was gorgeous, and I just really felt like having a strawberry balsamic. They try to call it a basmati, but, I know the true name of that beer.
Yeah.
And I just sat near the open garage doors and had 2 or 3 of them, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It is one of my favorite beers that they make. So once they pair that with a food, a food creation, can't wait. That's going to be amazing. One thing that I thought was interesting that they said is Cincinnati food, the whole Cincinnati food scene is going through a renaissance. It is moving away from fine dining and into more of, and I kind of hate this phrase, but it makes sense, but that elevated bar food kind of stuff. And
so this is a couple of steps above like a fast casual, right? So, this isn't taking the this is taking exactly what they said, right? Bar food, bringing it up to new and interesting or just flavors that make you or spark your interest.
Right.
That bar food is comfortable. It's
it really
easy.
is. Yeah.
It's comfortable, it's easy, and if you can make comfortable and easy taste better than just
do it.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, their I don't want to say excuse, but their reasoning for it is everyone these days is broke, which is also true. I mean, with the pandemic, with everything else going on, what people have kind of allocated other budgets to spend towards food when they're going out is probably a lot lower than what it used to be. But if you're going to be spending that money on food, make it good food. Make it that elevated bar food, such as the soy sauce poutine with a marinated egg that Woodburn Kitchen is going to have on their menu.
Yeah, that's the example they gave, right? So instead of going out on a fine dining experience, say that costs $100 a person, you can go out to a place, and I'll call it local. Let's call it Cincinnati radius. Go out to a local place, have some nice drink offerings, and I won't limit it to beer because a lot of the places around town are doing more than beer or serving more than beer.
Which I think is smart. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And so you can go out, you can have a nice evening, have some nice food, spend half or less than what you were going to spend on that fine dining experience, and maybe you can go ahead and have an experience like that again same week or the week after or 2 times a month or something of that nature. And that certainly is certainly, I think, a very smart way to approach. When these businesses certainly are going to rely on a core group of traffic, and if you can make some of these places into a routine, and a routine doesn't have to be 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 1 time a week. A routine could be once a month. A routine could be once every other month. But if you talk about it, and over a course of time, you get your friends, family, neighbors, coworkers to experience that, and they agree and they like that sort of experience. Well, your 1 time a month turns into 3 or 4 other people's 1 time a month, which turns into 5 times a month for people that wouldn't have gone there.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that it is a really smart decision and a really smart way of approaching it, because as we said in the beginning of the segment, they're using the Woodburn Kitchen as a way to kind of hone that culinary experience to be able to translate that into what they're doing at the other March 1st conglomerate locations, to where right now the other locations have pizzas and salads and other sandwiches. But if they can make what's already, good food at those other locations even better by adding that craft or that artisanal, whatever word you want to use, influence based off of what people are enjoying and saying they really like at Woodburn Kitchen, I mean, they're going to knock it out of the park at all their locations. You're not going to go there just because they have good beer. Yeah, and get a sandwich or get a burger while you're there because it's good too. It's going to be an equal share of go there because they have good food and good beer and good cocktails and good, hard seltzers and sodas and whatever else they're putting out there. It's going to be a whole experience spread upon all the locations.
And I think there's a difference for our listeners. I think there's a difference where you go somewhere because something's good enough. And then you go somewhere and say, no, that's good. And then you go there and say, well, that's pretty good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And then you go into the higher tiers of, sit down table service, not even fine dining, but sit down table service, elevated dining, and then sit down table service, fine dining. It's like, so let's keep in mind that when we call something good, hey, that's better than good enough.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Good enough is showing up somewhere, having a beer or two, and being okay with, the whatever way they decide to put out pretzels.
Right.
I mean, this
is the same microwave pretzel you can get anywhere, but they warm up the beer cheese as well instead of giving it to you cold.
Right.
That's good versus, the cold beer cheese. It's good enough. It's still there.
Right.
Yeah. But no, this is a really cool episode because it focused very, very little on the beer aspect of the umbrella of the companies that Woodburn falls under, and it was entirely about the kitchen and how they want to use that to establish themselves as a staple brewery in the Woodburn, Walnut Hills area. They want it to be a place that you go not just to get a pint or two, but to get dinner or lunch or even really, really well-crafted snacks in between meals.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely a cool thing for the gnome to get into because so many times in the past where a brewery was going to have a food option, yes, the gnome would have, say the proprietor of the brewery or the brewer, and then a representative that is going to be in charge of the food or whatnot. But this was really cool to have the people who are creating the meals, who are day-to-day serving the meals and coming up with that, to be able to have their own lane, their own show, their own podcast, to be able to talk about that stuff.
And I
right?
think
No, but I thought what was cool is, even though this is Cincy Brewcast and they didn't talk about beer very much at all, there was no From the Beer Fridge, it really gave them the opportunity to talk about their past, to talk about what they're offering, to talk about the approach. And I thought that was really cool. And in many cases, if other places and other breweries are taking an approach that is going to evolve or is going to dive into caring more about the food product itself, it's a great way for him to approach getting the word out on that, rather than just having the proprietor say, hey, we're having, we have this food and we always change the menu. And, it went deeper than that. And I appreciated it.
Yeah. And I think that what played into that so well is the fact that this is not a separate restaurant that's just renting space out in a brewery. This is part of Woodburn. This is part of the same ownership. I don't know how to phrase it correctly, but part of the same ownership group. They are all employees under the same umbrella.
Yeah, this isn't lease space that
right.
Somebody's coming in and taking it, working their wares, plying their trade. This is Woodburn brand and their parent company deciding that they are going to make food, and they are going to make good food.
And I think that's why exactly what you had just said before. I think that's why this episode worked so well, is because it wasn't Gnome interviewing a complete separate entity from a brewery. He was still interviewing a brewery. It's just a portion of the brewery that not a lot of other Cincinnati breweries have as part of a in-house staff.
And everybody has to decide what business model is right for them.
Sure.
We're not judging in any way what model you feel is right for you. We're just saying that it was really cool to take this approach with them as far as a show, with them taking this approach as a business.
Agreed. The only other final note that I had on this episode is something that they did say they did ask Josh about, is there anything additional within all of the brands that they encompass that they kind of wanted to shout out or mention. And they have their seltzer-specific production facility is just about open, or maybe by the time this releases, it'll be fully open, which means there will be more room at Fig Leaf and March 1st for activities. I mean, beer.
Right.
Activities, beer. One of the two. There'll be more room at some of these other breweries that are part of the family for activities up to and including brewing beer instead of just brewing seltzer.
Yep.
Is that all you had?
That's what I got.
Cool. Well, my glass is empty, so you still have some slow pour to finish, but you look pretty close to being ready for a refill as well.
I am.
All right, so let's take another real quick break, and then we will get right back to talking about probably one of the most fun shows that we get the amazing opportunity to recap, Shift Beers.
Yes. Let's take that break, and we'll be right back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for once again waiting 0.5 seconds for us to take a really quick break. We're back. We both have full glasses, and we're both doing the HighGrain slow pour because, my God, I am in love with slow pour Pilsners after BC's installed that tap handle.
Yeah, it's get down here,
good.
y'all. I don't know what you're doing if you're not here. And not having a slow pour Pils. Let's go.
It's true. So far they've had one non-Pilsner on the slow pour, and that was the Schwarzbier, wasn't it? From
it was a lager though.
HighGrain. Oh, that's right. It was the Luke I Am Your lager from HighGrain, or not HighGrain. I'm sorry, Grainworks. Grainworks.
Katie was in here earlier.
Katie was in here. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Tying it all together.
Yep.
But no,
Katie's a rep for this area for HighGrain, not
Grainworks.
We have the grains mixed up. Oh my God!
I have tainted your mind and all of your words by me mixing up stuff. Everything from the slow pour tap has been ridiculously good from the day that they got it installed. So definitely make it up here to either the Liberty or the Montgomery locations, and get yourself a slow pour, whatever is on that slow pour tap. I guarantee you it will be creamy and delicious and absolutely phenomenal.
Yes, and that leads us into
Shift Beers. Yeah, episode 67. They had beers with Danny from Sonder. I don't think he was there representing Sonder Stories as much as Sonder. He really was just representing himself. There was no real brand representation.
Right, other than the fact that he brought Sonder beer.
He did. He brought a lot of Sonder
which is
beer.
On brand.
Hell yeah, it is.
Sonder or Danny.
I would expect nothing less. I mean, if you have access to all of Sonder's beers, why would you not bring it to any gathering you go to, be it a podcast or freaking kickball?
Yeah.
Which he said that he played during this episode. Well, he didn't play during the episode, but during the episode, he said that he does kickball, and that's ridiculously cool. Disc golf, kickball. Is there any sports ball Danny cannot play or does not play?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't said that is he a pickleball player?
He hasn't said that he doesn't play pickleball.
Okay, so fair.
So yeah.
So let's assume he's good at all of it.
He probably is. He is probably one of those people where when you first look at him, you go, I don't think he's a sports guy, either watching it, playing it, whatever.
Right.
But then you start talking to him, and he mentions all of these sports that he is involved with, and you realize, holy shit, he is the sports guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get it. What was it? Oh, God. What was the name of the actor?
Robert De Niro.
No.
Keanu Reeves.
No.
Morgan Freeman.
No. Okay, so there was a story where Burt Reynolds was asked about athletes or actors who were athletes, and he said, let me tell you something, Adam Sandler, one of the best athletes I've ever come in contact with. And we're like, well, what? And he's like, no, I can tell you, this guy can do anything. He can throw a football, he can shoot a basketball. He's just amazingly athletic. So I totally get what you're talking about. Danny Harold is one of those people where you just sneaky athletic. right? It just good at all of the athletes' things.
Well, every single time there was a show that Danny's on, obviously most of the time it is Sonder stories. This time Shift Beers, but I feel like every conversation with him, you randomly get these little nuggets where he mentions yet another sport that he does with his friends. And none of it is super intense, super serious, super, they're trying to get on the Olympic team for curling kind of stuff. But he plays everything. Like, he is always involved in all of the sports, and it never fails to surprise me. I think it's awesome. I think it's super cool.
I would not be surprised if one day, I don't know where I'd be, but out with Danny Harold, and, he's just like, yeah, so, I went on this trip. I went out of town, and I say, oh, you were in a wedding? Mm-hmm. He's like, no, actually, what I was in this dodgeball competition.
It would not surprise me at all.
Not surprise me at all.
It would be something to where it's like, oh yeah, so I went out of town to be a hired man at this specific wedding, and I also was contracted to provide them information on what pizza to have for the reception. But while I was out, there was, as you said, this amazing dodgeball court out there that I knew a couple people. So after the wedding, after the reception, the pizza engagement that he was involved with because as we all know, he is in his own words, a slut for pizza.
Yeah.
Then he goes off to play dodgeball with a whole bunch of friends, and it's ridiculous. I'm not that athletic.
I used to be very athletic, but I am. I turned in my brewer. I laid into my brewer athleticism, and so that's just not the way I am anymore. But
so getting back to Shift Beers, which all this does tie into it. A lot of this, Danny did talk about a lot of this, so it's not that we were completely off base talking about all the things that Danny does, because again, it was brought up in Shift Beers.
Yep.
One of the things that they played that we'll talk about a little later is they played the Crispy Boy game, as I called it, which was so much fun to listen to. They had some really surprising results, including, and this won't necessarily give anything away, I don't think, but let me know if you want me to cut this.
Well, what I can do is I can explain what the Crispy Boy game is.
Yes.
And then maybe give them a little tease into some of that. Okay.
Perfect.
So the Crispy Boy game is, and you can play along, or you can play this at home. What you do is you get your crew together, and you're going to decide to play the Crispy Boy game. And what it is everybody brings a macro Crispy Boy, something of the mass-produced crispiness.
Or and is that what does the new report call those? Not generic. Yeah, it is.
They call them generic.
Yeah.
You get a
generic Crispy Boy,
mass-produced or a generic Crispy Boy, and then you get a craft Crispy Boy, and then you make sure that they are hidden. Whatever way you want to hide them in paper wino bags or whatever it is. And then what you do is you just have a beer tasting with them. Yeah. And then you have your friends decide, is it craft or is it macro
or generic, right?
Macro or generic. And
bonus points if you can decide, if you can pick what the actual beer is.
Right. And the loser has to lose the worst one off of the winner's butt.
Yeah, because they did mention in this episode that butt losing had not been a thing on the show for quite a while, so they brought it back with this game. And it was awkward, but props to them for making a decision and going with it.
It's one of those things where Shift Beers is not afraid to go back to the well.
No,
when something
really
works, they are going to work it into the ground.
But not forcefully, which in this context sounds like that could be a terrible, terrible thing.
Right,
but
not forcefully.
It's something to where they're like, hey, we haven't mentioned or we haven't had anything to do with butt losing in quite a while, but they make sure that it's an organic fit for the situation and not something that they try to shoehorn in, because force is never a good thing. You never want to force something in.
No.
When it comes to losing,
it's got to be real easy, nice
real
and easy.
real nice and easy there. A couple of
idea for the Christmas party, by the way.
There we go.
Idea
there we
for the
go.
Christmas party
2022.
An ice sculpture an
That
ice
includes a
sculpture luge
Yes.
that has it's you put it through the top and it's through the butt cheeks and then it comes right out through the butt cheeks. So we have two
So
anatomical
in this,
figures. So you have an anatomical
okay.
figure, let's say without male parts, and one with male parts.
All right.
And then
All right.
you have the you could end up having the what's called the Kraken ball, where it luges through the crack and then off the ball.
Goodness, this is getting complex.
Well, and
But
we're going to
hey,
need to figure out
so-
how we're going to pay for these ice sculptures.
I'm telling you. So guys,
where do they go to help us pay for these things, Julia?
truthbeerpod.com. That is the best place to support us and our ice luge goals for this year's podcaster Christmas party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Have you ever had a shot off of an ice luge? Butt or no butt, I'm not going to judge.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
So this year will be the first time.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I have once. It did not end well, and
So
so tying back into episode 67 of Shift Beers, they talked a little bit in the beginning about pack techs and how pack teching is not for the weak. And
No.
Brian has an amazing pack technique.
He said he does.
Yes.
And if you ask Brian, he has an amazing technique for anything.
It's true.
I call bullshit and call the day and the time, as long as I'm not working one of my other jobs. I will be there and I will put you in the dust, Brian.
Pack tech off competition.
I will
Who
put
has
you
the
in the
best
dust.
pack technique. I'm down. We'll record it and we'll put it up on YouTube because we have YouTube.
This guy's a
stuff
liar.
now.
I mean, he's just overinflating, his day-to-day, whatnots.
Well, but he also claimed to have the very best beer case hiding technique out of the entire gang that was there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
this
with
was
the
a great.
blanket.
This was a
Yeah,
great technique. I'm going to go ahead and throw a blanket over the beer cases in my trunk.
No one will ever have any clue that
Nope.
they're there.
Ever.
It is the best technique ever.
Ever.
You blanket the
Also,
beers.
Brian, I want to let you know it's okay to take your Halloween costume off. All right, you don't need to be the guy from the Big Lebowski all the way into February.
Okay, so I do want to say one thing about that, based off of purely social media posts. For the Superb Owl, to make sure that the NFL, who I am certain listens and follows and subscribes to us on, at Truth Beer Pod everywhere, there was a pretty badass looking a Joe Burrow outfit going on social media by Brian. He had, almost the Dwayne The Rock Johnson look with the turtleneck and the bling necklace and all that, but I knew it was Joey B, our beloved quarterback. So shout out to you. I saw it.
I missed it.
I see you, Brian. I see you out there
I saw the chug
doing your
that he
thing.
lost, but anyways.
I mean, it's fine. I lose chugs all the time, as we saw on the Craft Beer Facebook group. I tried to chug
Oh, you did fine.
an ice cold thunder snow, and that
You did fine.
not.
You did fine.
No, they did have a decent conversation though about conies, and that is from when we talked about Sonder stories. That is where someone mentioned like gravy fries, and the Newbert Report commented on Twitter, "It's called poutine, you uncultured swine," which I agree with Newbert Report.
That's
when you
fine.
have gravy on fries, it's not just called
but when you have
gravy fries.
1,000 cheese conies, it's called poo.
That's true. That is very true. It is something that maybe Django could aim for. Maybe 500 just to start. 500 a year. We all know that he loves his conies.
Yeah.
But damn.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He had a day with like 9 or 10.
Listen to last week's
Put down
episode.
a dozen
and,
or something like that,
yeah.
and he's like, oh.
No. Oh, good God. Now, this episode was pretty cool because it was full of a lot of stories from everyone. It wasn't aside from the Crispy Boy Challenge game that they played near the end, a lot of the episode was about stories from all of them, from the entire Shift Beers crew and Danny, about different things that they had experienced, such as, the real Brian being banned from all Hard Rock casinos in the entire country. That was a fun story that you should definitely check out this episode too to hear. And Josh deleting a ham salad sandwich. There's a good chunk of, kind of tied to that, some food should never be eaten sober. Do you have any foods that you will not eat when you're sober? That are only kind of drunk foods?
Drunk food. That's a tough one, Julia, because with me, I mean, I can't eat a lot of things that a lot of people just eat, right?
That's true, yeah.
So
So you're kind of conscious of it regardless of...
Yeah, even...
Of alcohol state.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still conscious of that.
Okay. That's fair.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Is there anything that you crave more when you've been drinking that you don't necessarily crave when you haven't been drinking? I guess maybe that's the closest.
Just more alcohol.
That's fair.
Maybe if there's bean burrito around or something like that. No cheese, just straight up beans.
Okay.
And I'm like, you know what? You know what would be nice right about now is a couple of bean burritos. So,
well, before we get to the most important part of our Shift Beers recap, did you have anything else about this episode? Which is really cool. I am so glad that Danny was willing and able to be on Shift Beers. He's
really cool.
Such an amazing guy.
He is.
And don't get to hang out with him nearly enough, but
No.
love everything he does for Sonder Stories. And it was good to see him outside of the Sonder Stories environment, just being himself and just having fun with another group of friends, sports ball or not.
Yes, I really enjoyed that. That was fun. It was a good listen. Go listen. The only thing that comes to mind when we talk about Shift Beers, before we get into the burp count, is that Shift Beers went and put themselves out there a little bit.
They did.
They sponsored some of the, the Northern Wrestling Federation?
That's the thing that I wasn't entirely clear about. They sponsored a wrestling match, and specifically for a wrestler called The Swinger, who is their favorite wrestler.
Yep.
But they sponsored
Who looks
a
like
wrestling
Paul Rudd
match.
in the Hawaiian shirt.
He does. He really does. They definitely put themselves out there. They got the name out there more by sponsoring a specific amateur wrestling match. I don't know if it was the whole event, just the one match where Swinger was part of. And I haven't seen any updates on if Swinger won that match or if that's still upcoming. I didn't pay attention to the date too much. But they're definitely making themselves much more public than they used to. So good on them for that.
Yeah, that was really cool. And I started following, I don't know, Swinger or the Swinger or whatever.
I think it's Swinger Fits. On the Twitters, yeah.
I started following him.
He's fun to watch.
I started following him. So Shift Beers went and did that, and clearly Swinger Fits gets their humor, gets their approach.
Yes. And
they had pictures with Swinger Fits. Did you get a picture with Swinger Fits?
No, they went down during intermission. So I was down at the Northern Wrestling Federation event that Josh and Chris from Shift Beers went down to. My Josh and Lee met them up down at Brewcast for that 2 weekends ago, I think that was.
Feel like that's right.
A lot of fun. Their favorite wrestler, Swinger, was there. So during kind of the intermission, they ran down because during intermission, a lot of the wrestlers will come out to get pictures with fans.
Or get dollar bills stuff down there, shorts.
All kinds of stuff that's probably inappropriate to mention. But yes, dollar bills were more than likely involved. They said that they told Swinger that they wanted him to be on Shift Beers, which would be phenomenal. So I'm sure Swinger listens to our show.
Well, I mean, if they listen to Shift Beers, they probably do. So
Swinger definitely needs to be on Shift Beers. I think he would be a phenomenal guest. That would be so much fun. And hopefully on the 26th, we're able to get a good group of people to go to Covington to see the next Northern Wrestling Federation.
Right. Yeah, they're
match.
in Covington on the 26th.
So we will talk after the show to make sure that you can participate in this event. So
that was really cool. I saw that Shift Beer sponsored them or that match. I don't know. I really didn't get it was almost like they put up like buy a square sort of scenario, but Shift Beers did, and good for them. And it if nothing else, it definitely helped to continue to foster that relationship with Swinger.
Yep.
And cool, good on you guys. I mean, look, it's putting money in something that you find is fun and exciting and enjoyable.
Putting money into what you believe in, but it also comes back to you because now their name is more out there than it would be. And
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's great. It didn't have anything to do with the episode, but it had to do with Shift Beers specifically.
Correct. So good on them for doing that. Seriously, if you're listening to us and you're not listening to Shift Beers, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, I don't know what you're doing.
Subscribe to Shift Beers, follow them. Listen to them, check them out, subscribe to their Patreon.
Yeah.
Apparently, Chris said that if you're not a Patreon subscriber, you're no longer allowed to listen to their free episodes. So
I don't know what that's about.
Be careful about that, but they're amazing. The show is so much fun.
And before we get into the burp count, I mean, just go and listen to all the shows that we talk about. And just like us, we appreciate the listenership, and it helps us to create inside jokes around those shows, right?
Yes.
I mean, it really, really does.
If you don't listen to them, they don't have the audience to where they feel they should continue to put out content. If they're not putting out content, we can't put out content.
Yeah,
it's a nice circle.
It's a big circle that way. Every week, we know that our content is going to be fresh and new because the shows that come out are fresh and new. Mm-hmm. If it was left up to Julia and I, I'm sure we could put together something, and I think we could put together something that people would love, but the purpose of this show is to promote Cincinnati Craft Beer, Cincinnati Craft Beer Podcasts, and drive traffic to those things. And hopefully everybody thinks those things are cool and fun and funny enough, and us, enjoyable enough to listen, to keep listening. So part of that, Julia, is one of our most favorite things to talk about. It is the burp counts.
It is. And I see that you have your hand on your glass of beer. Would you like me to advise the listeners on what the burp count game is so that you can enjoy some of your amazing slow pour?
Do it.
All right. So the burp count game, when we started this podcast, we thought it would be fun for there to be some type of drinking game. And I say that loosely, but some type of game where there is a certain count when a podcast host or a podcast team says or does a certain amount of things. What made the most sense was Shift Beers. There are a ton of things in Shift Beers that are consistent to the show, and that could be either Josh or Chris having an Alzheimer moment where they don't remember something that happened 5 minutes ago. It could be something to where they hit one of their Brian buttons to make you think that Brian is a part of the show when actually he's not even there. It's just a pre-recorded button that they created. What we ended up settling on, however, is burps. They burp into the mic. They do not hold back. So we said the best game, or the best drinking game for this, is going to be the burp count game. And the burp count game is you take a drink for every audible burp. One burp is equivalent to approximately 2 ounces of liquid. For all intents and purposes, we'll say beer. What we do then is we count up the number of burps, give you the total number of ounces of liquid that you would need to drink while listening to this episode to play the burp game, and then break the number of ounces down into the total number of pints that you would need to drink during the episode of Shift Beers. So I am going to let you all know what today's burp count is. And today's burp count, I will say, is special. Today's burp count is a new record for the Shift Beers team.
Wow.
Yes. The previous record was episode 55 with Marco and Lee being present.
Oh.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. That episode had a total of 78 burps, which equaled out to 9.75 pints of liquid.
You're welcome.
This episode with Danny, which Danny didn't even really burp super audibly. Well, I mean, if he was, it wasn't obvious that it was him. I think towards the end he kind of got into it. But most of this was Josh and Chris knowing that they needed needed to bring it for this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a little bit tough. I mean, we talked about it on, an episode or two. And that it's really tough. And sometimes you know exactly where the burp's coming from. Sometimes you're not sure. And it's really tough to, praise or blame Danny in any way.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But
like for us, I know that my Josh has mentioned to me, hey, if you're on shift beers again, or you get up the burp count, I'm not an audible burper. Like, it's just never been something that I really do.
Oh, God. When I'm on again, and I say that, I'm a salesman, right? When I'm on again, I am going to bring it.
Hell
especially since I had the record.
You did.
The
now
show
you need
I
to
was
break
on.
Your own record.
We
Yes.
need to break this record.
So episode 55 with my man Marco and Lee, who is, my God, the best podcast guest of all time.
Great
I'll
podcast
say
guest.
It. They had on
great
episode
guest.
55 of Shift Beer 78 burps, 9.75 pints. This episode 67 of Shift Beers with Danny from Sonder Stories as their guest. A solid 80 burps, which the last two of those, the one that actually pushed them over that limit, came in the last 3 to 5 minutes of the show, because I'm watching this going, man, they are so close to breaking that record. Are they going to do it? 80 burps. That is 160 ounces of liquid. That is 10 pints that you would need to consume while listening to this episode and playing the burp game.
It's about an hour and 40 minutes.
Less than that. It was like an hour 33-ish.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
It was under an hour 40,
You
slightly
lit.
over an hour 30. You
lit. I'm
lit.
just telling you.
You are feeling fucking good.
Yeah.
But my God,
congratulations.
Hell yeah. So
Congratulations.
Danny, and I give a big portion of the props to Danny, because as the guest of the show, he's the one that elevates the level of the show, the energy of the show, the amount of burps on the show. That all comes from the energy that the guest brings. Like when it's just the four of them, yeah, they can bring it, but there's no extra.
Well, they bring it. I mean,
Yeah,
they always bring it. But with a guest,
There's also
it's
just
like
a
welcome.
little more.
It's one of those like welcome to the neighborhood type things.
True that.
But
True
but
that.
it's welcome to the neighborhood. Like your family, you're going to be here. I mean, let's get into this.
Which I will
warm
say,
up
I
to
love
this.
how
Let's
Danny
go.
mentioned your text to him while they were recording the show.
He did.
Because
He
you did let him know, hey, we count burps, so be sure you lean into that mic if you have something coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going behind the scenes or behind the curtain, right?
It's right in the episode, yeah.
So I while he was recording Shift Beers, I was at Sonder. I text Danny. I was like, "Hey, buddy, I'm at Sonder. I'm having this beer," and he texts back, "I'm recording Shift Beers."
That's
and
so
I said,
fun.
"That's
I love
awesome."
it.
I text back, "That's awesome." I said, "By the way, don't forget our podcast counts burps, so you better bring it."
Hell yeah.
And he's sent me some nice laughing emojis and stuff like that. But he mentioned it on the show, which was nice.
Yeah.
And
That was so awesome.
I tried to tell him, it's like, look, man, you got to bring it. And
So congratulations to Shift Beers
yes,
for breaking your previous burp count record.
All right.
You got, 80 burps.
Okay.
That's nothing to sneeze at.
okay.
Good. So I think in order to break that, you need to have Marco, Lee, Danny, and myself on the next
Okay.
show that you want to try to get that next level. But
Right.
goddamn,
Okay.
good job.
I'm reloaded.
Marco is ready. Was there anything about this episode of Shift Beers that you wanted to touch on before we kind of wrap up this particular episode 29?
Julia,
Marco.
what is not said is probably best left
right.
not said.
All right. Well, we thank everybody for listening. As always, we really appreciate your support. Huge shout out, and my apologies. I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the episode. Huge shout out to my mom for buying us one of the pints that we drank tonight. I texted Marco as soon as I saw that and said my mom bought us a pint. So
Julia's mom.
we should have put at the beginning of the episode.
It'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. It has been such a crazy week that I just.
Thank you, Mom.
I didn't put the post.
Thank you, Julia's mom.
But thank you so much. If you would like to support Truth Beer and Podsequences, monetarily or otherwise, you can follow us at Truth Beer Pod on all the social medias, including YouTube now. We are not at Truth Beer Pod on YouTube yet because we need 100 subscribers to do that. So please subscribe. Every episode that we publish will be on YouTube. The only one we will not put on YouTube is going to be our 0.5s, our calendar episodes, because they are so time frame specific. It just doesn't make sense to put them out there. They'll be invalid by the time you get to them. But we are on YouTube now. We are on every other social media platform at Truth Beer Pod. Email us at truthbeerpod@gmail.com if you have any ideas, suggestions. And if you want to support our show by buying us a pint, like my mom did, and she bought us a pint. She supported this entire episode, and I'm sorry that it took until the end of the episode to mention that. Love you, Mom. I really do. Go to truthbeerpod.com. If you're on mobile, there will be a big blue support us link if you scroll to the bottom of the page. If you're on a PC, it should be right there up on the left, but look for the big blue support us link. You can buy us a pint. You can throw a couple of dollars our way to help us upgrade our crappy headphones, as the gnome would say, or to buy us a pint, or to do something that helps us get closer to having some video content for YouTube or for any of the other platforms that we are on. We appreciate your listenership so much, but any additional support you can throw our way by liking, subscribing, reviewing, any of that is appreciated. We are number 243 on the Canadian Food Apple Podcast charts once again.
Hell yeah.
Thank you to the Newbert Report, because without them, we would not show up on the Canadian food podcasting charts. But thank you. And we cannot wait to do this again next week. Which brings me to a huge question. Marco, what are you going to be doing next week?
Oh, Julia, I know what I'm going to be doing this week is listening to all the Cincinnati-based craft beer podcasts, and then I look forward to getting together with you next Tuesday to talk about all of those.
Hell yeah, we are going to be on it, so thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.